Well, good morning. My cell phone is telling me it's 8:30. So if it's correctly set to the atomic clock, we're going to get started. When I was preparing, mostly facilitating, trying to find folks to help out with this for our President's annual planning retreat, I decided to look in the university archives just to see where did all this come from. I had a vague recall. But I found out that two significant things happened in 1993. Number one, the University Planning Council was established. And number two, we had our very first presidential planning retreat. So it's 25 years ago, guys. If you do the math, I think I'm right. Dr. Snyder, is he here? Yeah. So I'm not going to waste any time, but to get us started on the 25th Annual President's Retreat, it's my honor to invite to the podium someone who's marking his 10th anniversary this year, our president, the 15th president of Tarleton State University, Dr. Dominic DeTavio.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 25th, I guess, huh? Anybody here for the first one? Do you remember? You do? Okay, whatever. Yeah. Dr. Murray's shaking her head. Yes, I remember that. Oh. Well, you know, what was happening before Donna came up at 8:30 precisely is really one of the, I think, most important things that happens every January at this event. And that is that you really have the opportunity to come together as the leaders of the university and just see each other and have the opportunity often to sit with people that you may not see on an everyday basis and have a pleasant conversation and kind of catch up with what has been going on across the campus in your lives and whatever else it might be that's on your minds. And so I do hope throughout the morning that you continue that interaction and really take advantage of the opportunity to be together with some people that you may not get the chance to see quite as often as you like. Obviously, the other two important parts of what we're going to do is, yes, we are kicking off, it seems like yesterday for me, because when I came, we were talking about SACs and kind of concluding the last piece of that process, and now we're beginning that process again. And obviously, something that's terribly important to any university. If you've looked at the news over the last couple of years, you've seen some major universities that have struggled with this. And I think we're very fortunate, and I want to say right up front, thank you to Dr. Snyder and Kim and Dennis, and I guess Kayla, wherever Kayla is going to be heading up our QEP, one of the really important components of this. So thanks to you for taking on what is certainly one of the most important activities of any university throughout their life cycle. And then the second part of this is we're going to talk again about some of the concepts that began a number of years ago regarding what is in that strategic plan. You know, that was something that began with a lot of groundswell of input. It was kind of called organic because it bubbled up from the bottom in terms of ideas and concepts, and eventually what turned into the major building blocks that we continue to use to this day, the vision statement to be the premier student-focused university in Texas and beyond, those four goal statements that I think the vice presidents will be reviewing with you, some of their activities, and you'll have a chance to talk about a bit more. Academic excellence, we changed that from innovation a couple years ago. Student transformation, community engagement, and exemplary service. And then the six core values that we've highlighted in a variety of ways across the university: tradition, integrity, leadership, excellence, service, and I miss civility. So those are an important part of it, and you have the opportunity to continue the conversation, because this plan, when it was initially formulated, was talked about going forward to 2020. So we have a couple years left to talk about those goals before we begin the process of thinking about there's some other major shift that we should make. And let me say very special to Nate and Donna, both for coordinating the whole morning's activities and for leading up the UPC. We appreciate your efforts on that on our behalf. So, in fact, why don't you thank them for making today possible? I don't want to spend much time here. I really want to emphasize just two things that I expect if you all think about it a little bit, you probably would come up with a number of examples related to this. One is the increasing competitiveness that we're seeing in higher education. And the other one is the rapid change that we're seeing in higher education. And I say those two things primarily because as any time we enter into a strategic planning process, anytime we talk about where we want to go, it's important to know a bit about the environment in which we're operating. And obviously, we are facing a very different environment with regard to competitiveness in higher education than many of us may have witnessed a decade or so ago. Obviously, what's happened in the online world has changed significantly and continues to evolve very rapidly. What's happening with for-profits in higher education is a relatively new phenomenon. And then I think we have great partners with community colleges, but the role of community colleges is really evolving in a pretty rapid, at a pretty rapid pace as well. And what they are going to look like and how it is that we need to be maybe a different partner with them in future years, I think is going to be a significant trend line that is going to be with us for a number of years. And then the change issue, any one of you could probably talk about what you think are some of those most significant changes taking place across the higher education landscape. One of the ones that we have been dealing with for the last couple of years, and I know we're going to have to deal with as we go into the next legislative session, is what the funding model for higher education looks like. You know, historically, we have really been focused on how it is that we manage our enrollment, how we shape our enrollment, what we do with that, because it was a primary driver behind the funding model for higher education. Well, there's an awful lot of conversation about that model shifting and shifting pretty dramatically. In fact, just received an email yesterday that the committee that's going to look at how to fund higher education in Texas has their first meeting scheduled. This is a joint committee of the Senate and the House. Their first meeting is scheduled for February 21st with the idea of proposing how it is that higher education should be funded in Texas into the next legislative session. They will be making recommendations for the senators and the representatives to consider. We have no idea what that might look like. Clearly, one of the things that's been on the table in Texas, and it's been talked a lot about across the country, and a number of states already have it in place, is a performance-based model. I'm sure that's going to be an active conversation in this committee. And quite frankly, we have said that we probably would welcome some kind of performance-based model because of the good work that you all have been doing. We would have been receiving, we think, a disproportionate share of those funds because we've been hitting our metrics at a pretty good clip. Going into the session as well, with that as a background, the other thing that's in the background is what's going to happen with regard to hurricane relief. Obviously, what happened around the Houston area is going to have a major impact, and that's going to be a topic of conversation that will affect some of the discretionary funding sources. Going forward too, affordability is not a new issue, but there's a lot of concern about where it is that higher education is placing itself and how it is that we can really deal with the affordability issues that face our students. At the federal level, higher education reauthorization, Higher Education Act is up for reauthorization, and that affects virtually everything that we do here, from accreditation to financial aid, how it is data is collected, what data are collected across a university. And then clearly one of the big issues that we're kind of at the spearhead of it is demographic change that's sweeping across this country. And what does that mean for us how we better position ourselves to better serve the students that we are likely to see, and what is it that's going to happen to high school populations, and what is the impact to us because of those changes in the demographics and the numbers of students that might be coming out of the high schools. So those are some of the kinds of things I want you to just keep in mind as you go through some of the conversations that you have at your table. There's an awful lot of change taking place, and there's an increasingly competitive environment out there that we all have to pay serious attention to. I believe at the end of the day, this is going to provide, your conversations are going to feed into what it is that the vice presidents then will consider as they go forward to work with you within their individual divisions to develop their specific plans, and that indeed will help inform the overall university plan for us to go forward. So this is, again, part of a process. Some of this stuff takes a while to kind of stew and boil, and people need to think about, but there is a lot of activity that goes on between what you might see as gaps in the conversation. But again, my hope is that you will have an opportunity in the months ahead to be working within your divisions to take some of the general concepts that are talked about here, and then those will be refined and put into the next iteration of our goal statements and some of the action plans that we'll be developing for the university. So it's an important day as we both kick off SACS, and then as we continue the progression that we've made on a 5+ year strategic plan. And your input is always the most critical part of that planning process. So I hope you both enjoy the conversations that you have, the interaction that you can have with each other with some people that you have not seen for a while, and really think seriously about the issues that are facing us as a university, facing us as a country, and how it is that we can best position ourselves to make this the best student experience possible for those that come to Tarleton State University. Thank you, folks. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Dr. DeTavio. Before I introduce our first presentation, I want to give you a brief rundown of the morning. If you look at your agendas, you'll see we're going to start out with a SACS presentation, and Dr. DeTavio has already talked a little bit about that, and then we're going to have a break. But when we come back, each of the VPs are going to make a presentation of their initiatives that they have in support of the University Strategic Plan. Following each individual presentation, we'll have brief table discussions. And you should have at your table, I hope, a facilitator and possibly even a note taker so that the facilitator doesn't have to do both. And if you don't, we'll move some things around. And I have laptops for any of the facilitators that need those. And then we're going to ask just a couple of questions. One is, what do you consider the most important ones that you just heard, the top two? What are the lower two? And then discuss the important aspects of the initiatives and things that are being pursued. What are we overlooking? Give us your feedback, your comments, and follow-up ideas. If you have some ideas that you'd prefer not to discuss in a group, or you just can't get consensus at your table for the note taker, there are some cards at the table that you can fill out additional comments, and there's a box at the back door, and you can drop your comments in there. I think that's the logistics. The facilitators are all good, I hope. Well, for our first presenter, I think this is the first time I've ever had a chance to introduce him, and it's probably the last time I get to introduce him. Many of you have probably heard that Dr. Murray declared this as the year of the Snyder, because after 42-year tenure, Dr. Dwayne Snyder, our Associate Provost and Senior Associate Vice President for Academic Administration, is retiring on June 15th. He is going to leave a huge void of institutional knowledge and history. But in the meantime, he's not off the hook yet. He is leading the initial phases of our SACS 2021. So please come and give us our SACS heads up, Dr. Snyder.
Thank you very much. Several things. First of all, to Dr. DeTavio and the Cabinet and the Planning Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to be in this strategic planning meeting because Southern Association reaccreditation is being tied much more to strategic plans than in the past. You'll hear some today briefly about the rewrite of some principles and things that were just voted on at the December meeting. This has been in the works for a year and a half or more, and there are some, I won't go into any detail, but among the things, the sort of the primary thing is that it's tied, including the QEP, Quality Enhancement Plan, are going to be tied much more directly to strategic plans of the university. And I think those are good things. I think those are moves in the right direction. So thank you. I would say that this year, in terms of the Southern Association reaccreditation effort, is sort of a microcosm of my career. And that is that I want to leave things in the university with things moving forward, things in place, and I figured out how to do that. Get good people to do it and stay out of the way. And so that's sort of what's been my theme for a long time. We have that. The QEP, one of the things that some of you have heard me say before, the Quality Enhancement Plan is the only part of this that starts and stops. Nothing else about reaccreditation for the Southern Association Commission on Colleges stops and starts. I started to use for my math friends, presuming I have some still, having been in administration long as I have, the example of it's a sine curve. And yes, it goes up and down, but the midpoint is 10 times bigger than the amplitude. But I figured, okay, never mind. So I won't say that. I'll just say that the QEP is the only part of it that stops and starts. The other wanes and then waxes and whatever, and so yes, we have that. I'm going to take just a moment and then I'll get to my point. There'll be some slides that I won't see, but she puts them up there to keep me on track. So every time a slide goes up, it means skip 2 topics and move forward. So that'll keep us on track. But I'm going to take a personal privilege and talk just a little bit about the fact that several of you know I've just finished some treatments. And so there's some things I learned in that process. First of all, I learned that when a doctor talks about inconsequential side effects, it means the doctor is not going to have them. And I learned that when they say that all the side effects are going to be relatively minor, it means that they would be minor if your brother-in-law had them. But actually they have been, and I'm doing quite well as far as I know. The changes, and there have been some, in terms of the new principles that are being adopted and we will be under, and our reaccreditation in 2021, do tie things more directly to the strategic plan. And it's 2021 because they had too many folks, they said, that were too many schools in the 2020 group, and they moved us a year. I'm going to tell you that that's a good thing for us, and I'm going to tell you that that is probably, in my opinion, I don't think there's too much doubt of this, that they didn't just choose randomly out of that group, that it's the effect of some folks in the past who've done very good jobs. I will not name all the people who should be named, and so some of you will feel bad. I'm just going to name just a few, but Diane Taylor, Kelly Styron, Jason Latouche, Morgan Carter, Mike Haynes, and others who did efforts on the 10-year reaccreditation in 2010 and who did the 5th-year interim report in 2015, and the folks from Midlothian who put up with the most recent site visit we had. All those things went well, and because of that, I think they were willing for our reaccreditation to slide a year, and it gives us a year to be in better shape, and we will be because of that. And so I give full credit to those folks. You will hear from Dr. Dennis Jones, Dr. Kim Reinierson, who are chairing what we've come to call the steering committee. You will hear from Kayla Peak, who will be chairing the QEP. The steering committee is further along in some of their work than is the QEP committee, and that's as it should be. The QEP group will be getting better organized. They're starting, but they'll get better organized this spring. We're still naming a few members to that group, but we have the members named for the other, and they're beginning to operate and need to be. So if you wonder a little bit today about the reason for hearing a little bit less about the QEP and a little bit more about the steering committee, it has almost everything to do with the timing and not the importance. This is going to still be an important process. In this December at the national meeting in New Orleans, I believe, we will have our organizational meeting with the cohort, the 2021 cohort. That is all those universities who will be up for reaccreditation in 2021. And so there will be, I don't know who all out of this, but the president and some of the vice presidents and the folks in the leadership group and whatever. And so there'll probably be a fairly large group there because it is, from their point of view, the kickoff. Now, again, you can't have waited till then, and we will not have waited till then to do things. But it will be getting organized with our vice presidents, the leadership that we have at the organization at that meeting. And so you'll hear more about this as we go. I'm going to come back at the very end and take one question so you be thinking about if you have a very short question in all these presentations, because I'll take one because we don't want to delay the break any longer than we have to. If you have longer questions, any one of us who are going to be up here today would be glad to sit down and have conversation with you about what the university is going to do and need to do in order to move toward appropriate reaccreditation in 2021. But what I'm going to do at this stage, and they'll leave me some notes and tell me what I left out later, is that I'm going to introduce Dr. Kim Reinerson. She's going to move forward, and she'll introduce Dennis Jones, and he'll move forward and introduce Kayla Peak. And we hear a little bit about the steering committee and the QEP and some of the folks, so you'll know who it is that you might contact, including us, if you would like to have further discussion. So I'm very happy with the chairs and co-chairs we have of these committees, and so I'm going to turn this over to Kim at this stage.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more before Dennis comes up here about the actual membership of the steering committee and what our work is going to be. I will say that we spent the summer talking about various individuals to serve on the steering committee. We wanted a broad representation so that this exercise we go through every 10 years truly gathers lots of input, lots of expertise as we seek to demonstrate how the university is complying with all of the new standards. So we have a group of individuals who have graciously volunteered to give their time and to work on this very important process for the university. So when you see these folks, think nice thoughts about them because they're going to be doing quite a bit of work over the next few years. So let me go ahead and introduce them. As you know, Dr. Dennis Jones and I are co-chairing, and Dr. Snyder serves as ex officio. As I name these folks, if they would not mind kind of standing and giving a little wave, to get proper recognition. The first person is Wayne Atchley. Are you here, Wayne? Okay. Jennifer Barrera. Lori Beatty. Angie Brown. You don't have to stay standing. Okay. Morgan Carter. Brenda Faulkner. Javier Garza, Daphne Hunt, Tom Tallick, Jason Latouche, Barry Lambert, Melody Loya, Joanna Shaw, Kent Styron, I knew I saw you, okay, Phil Sudman, who I think is in class right now, Elizabeth Wallace, We also have an undergraduate student, Reese Carey, serving as a member of the committee, and a graduate student, Julie Stouty. Some of you may hear from Julie Stouty as she seeks to contact various offices across campus to gather some of the information. This steering committee group has already met. We met in the fall, and then they were divided into subcommittees. The subcommittee chairs will be identified in a moment when Dennis comes up to speak, and they'll talk about the specific sections that their subcommittees are examining and looking at in terms of determining our level of compliance and what we need to show that compliance to SACS. In addition to those members that I just mentioned, in an effort to really make sure we do have the expertise on each of those subcommittees, several groups asked for additional members, and the affiliate members are Justin Boyd, Jennifer Yeager, Heather Hawk, Kyle Parsons, David Sutton, Brian Hicks, who's a student, and Skylar McGuire, who's a student. We also plan to add some ad hoc members from Staff Council and Faculty Senate so that those individuals will always have an idea of what's happening in the steering committee so they can report back to those bodies as well, because we want to make sure that that information is always well disseminated. Dr. Janice Jones is going to join us now and kind of go through what our process is going to be in terms of a timeline, and then he's going to introduce each subcommittee chair to discuss a little bit about their sections. As Dennis makes his way up here, I will say he and I attended a day-long workshop this past December at the SACS meeting that was in Dallas. And we went to a terrific workshop that really showed us best practices in terms of how to get through this process. And I have to say, a couple of times I wanted to give him a high five. Unprofessional, but I wanted to, because I felt like we were already on a really good track with this group. We've got a great group of people and they're really committed. So I'll turn it over to Dennis and we'll carry on.
Good morning. Yeah, you're still awake. That's always good. No, anytime you go to a workshop, you go to professional conferences, you hope that you hear a few new things, but you want 90% of the stuff you hear, you want to say, yeah, I know that. Because if not, you get in trouble. And that, really, we got some ideas, but a lot of the things we heard was, yeah, we already are doing that, or that's in our plan, so we felt good about that. Briefly up on the screen is a timeline of where we're headed and where we're going. It's a macro level, obviously lots of detail in there, but as Kim mentioned, the committee met in the fall, we got them organized. They are in the process now of identifying data needs for the various requirements. And then what we're really going to do this spring is kind of a snapshot. Where are we in good shape? Where do we have opportunities for growth? Isn't that the way you look at it? Opportunities for growth. Like I tell my students at midterm exams, you guys have unlimited potential. You go nowhere but up. So, but that's really what we're doing. And then we will go with the orientation that Dr. Snyder mentioned. Then there's a lot of detail, obviously, that happens in between there. But we will submit a compliance report in 2020. That is our report of how we've met the requirements. Typically what happens, that will go to an off-site review committee, and they may have some comments for us, possibly. They may say it's perfect. But by chance, should they have a couple areas of concern, we will get an opportunity to write a focus report on those areas. Those of you who were involved in this 10 years ago probably remember this opportunity. With great smiles, I see Kelly over there, oh yeah, great. So, we'll get a chance to do that, and that's to clarify things for them, because keep in mind, they're not here, they don't understand us. They may not understand exactly what we're doing. None of them are from Texas. You do not have any people from Texas on your committee, so they don't understand how Texas higher ed is supposed to work, or actually does work. So then what will happen is we'll get a chance to respond to that. Then they will come for an on-site visit, probably sometime March or so of 2021. And they will meet with a lot of people here, so be prepared. They will want to look at files. They want to do a whole lot of different things. Then we may get an opportunity, they will go and give us a report where we're at, and we may get an opportunity to write what they call a response report to that. If they still have some minor concerns about us, and hopefully not major concerns, we'll get a chance to respond to those. And then in December 2021, at the meeting, they will vote and we will be reaffirmed for another 10 years. So that's the process. Obviously lots of detail in there, but it kind of gives you a big picture of where we're going, and that's why we're starting now, because we don't want to rush the process. Next slide. Okay. For those of you who were involved in this last time, different. The three biggest changes in the standards that when they were approved in December was what Dwayne mentioned first, tying what we're doing directly to our planning process, and that's why these types of meetings are so important. Second, they reorganized the standards. There's no 3.3.1 anymore. They reorganized them into 14 areas. And I think that really helps us organize, and it helped us as a committee get organized, because as I counted, there used to be about 35 standards, it's now down to 14, but really it's not a whole lot different. A lot of the same things. Probably the biggest difference, as I've seen from looking at this, and it's more of a trend, is not only they're asking what you're doing, but providing verifiable evidence that you're doing it. We had to do that before, but there's more of a push on the evidence of, okay, you have this policy, show us examples when you implement the policy. Show us examples of when you did variation from your policy. Show us examples of when you didn't follow your policy. And that's something that's really different. So therefore, as we're giving evidence, we're going to be giving more evidence than just, do you have a policy that does this? Yes, we do. Well, can you prove that we're actually doing it? So our committees will be asking you guys over the next few years for information. That Julie will doing a lot of the legwork for our committee, because rather than having faculty and staff spend time doing that, collecting that information, we're going to ask Julie to help with that. But you'll hear from Julie, you'll hear from members of the committee. What I'd like to do now, I've covered what I'm supposed to do. I would like to have briefly each of our committee chairs, subcommittee chairs, they have 60 seconds. Okay? Kim has her stopwatch. Okay? And her taser, so they will stay on time. We are not going necessarily in this order because we have some people that have classes that have to leave in a minute. And then we have some people who are in class right now, such as Phil. So we're going to limit it out of order, but we'll make sure everybody gets squared away. If you guys want to wander up this way, or you can stay where you are, whatever works for you. The first one we're going to have is Section 6, which is Joanna Shaw.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanna Shaw. I'm heading up the subcommittee of the faculty section. So just a little bit about what we're doing, and I'm going to do less than 60 seconds. That doesn't count, Kim. Qualified, effective faculty members are essential to carry out the mission of the institution to ensure the quality and the integrity of its academic program. So that comes straight from the guidelines. And what we're really doing is gathering information about faculty, everything you can imagine. And they're coming from places, faculty handbook, they're coming from workday systems. There's a lot of crossover between the different sections, and so we're going to kind of be working on that. And so I'm heading that up. And so if you hear from me or see an email from me, please respond to me. It will make me so happy, thus making Kim and Dennis happy as well. And so I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Next will be Elizabeth Wallace, and Elizabeth has 3 sections.
Section 2 is our mission statement. A clearly defined and comprehensive mission guides the public's perception of the nature of our institution. It conveys a sense of our institution's uniqueness and identifies the qualities, characteristics, and values that define Tarleton's role in higher education. We will document our mission and our addressing teaching, learning, and service by showing our periodic review of our mission and submission of that to our governing entities. Is it okay to do number 3 as well?
You're on a roll.
All right. Section 3, documentation that Tarleton is a continuously functioning organization legally authorized to grant degrees and academic credentials. And that we adhere to the SAC-COC policies and standards. And our documentation will include the coordinating board's authorizations of us as an institution, as well as we might reach into some of the individual accreditations, such as the ACBSP process, to document our verifiability. And then section 11 is the library and learning information resources. And we want to document we are providing adequate support for Tarleton's curriculum and mission, and that our students, faculty, and staff have access to appropriate collections, services, and other library-related resources that support all of our educational research, public service programs, and services wherever they are offered. And documentation will include our services, our staff, and our resources, and that our documentation, that the access to those is periodically reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things you may have heard me mention is documentation and periodic review. So it's not only do we have policy, do we have resources, do we review them on a regular basis, do we have evidence we're reviewing them on a regular basis? So, Ms. Brown.
Good morning. I am sub-chair of 3 different sections, Section 4, Governing Board, Section 5, Administration and Organization, and then Section 14, which is our Transparency and Institutional Representation. Under the Governing Board, we'll be looking to the system. This is how we are governed, and so we will be looking to the Board of Regents, how the Board of Regents is established, how they get their voting powers, that their powers are balanced, that there's no minority that has any external pressures or whatsoever in how we're organized or how we conduct our business. We'll be looking at organizational charts, the relationships of our board to Tarleton. We'll be looking at position descriptions, policies, even state laws that organize us as an institution. Under Section 5, we'll be looking at our institution's organization. We'll be looking at how we're organized. What is our reporting relationships? What is our checks and balances? We'll be looking at our processes. We'll definitely be looking at a lot of policies through this. Something to kind of think about from your area. If you have a process or a procedure that you use routinely, is it documented, and do we have it formalized in some kind of a SAP or a procedure? So we'll be looking at Dr. Ottavio and his position and his role as our leader, and how he leads our educational, administrative, and fiscal programs, our intercollegiate athletic program, and then of course our fundraising responsibilities. And then of course in Section 14, that is just showing that we say we do what we do. How do we maintain our commitment to our membership, to the accreditation process, and that we show that we accurately represent this relationship to our public, to our stakeholders, and then of course to our government. So we'll be looking at our documentation of a lot of our publications, even our state or Department of Education, Department of Labor reports, and other accrediting bodies. We have a lot of individual accrediting bodies within Tarleton, so we'll be looking at those processes as well. So, thank you.
Jason. Dr. Latouche.
You can say Jason, it's okay. Good morning. I've only got one standard, which is Section 8. So if you were familiar with the old SAC standards, what they've done with this is taken all the various sections that they had under the old standards that were dealing with academic assessment and student support towards academic assessment. So those were standards federal requirement 4.1, the 3.3.1.1, the 3.3.1.3, and the 3.5.1. So they're everything, eyes glazed over across the room. That's everything that has to do with institutional assessment of student learning, program level assessment of student learning, core assessment of student learning and core courses, general education, but it's also assessment of student affairs and the things that are going on that side of the house as well. So what's going on to support student learning and living learning communities and tutoring and SI programs. So all of those have been brought together in this section. And the one thing that I would say to emphasize, particularly for this section, but across the report as you're thinking about this, is we've done a lot of work to set up assessment plans We're gathering rich assessment data. What we really need to demonstrate for SAC COC is that we're taking that data and using it to inform our decision making. So that's that section amongst Weave that says action plans. When you go in, make sure that your action plans are representing all those wonderful initiatives that we're actually doing, because a lot of times we kind of forget to document that. And when you do, take that extra step, put in a sentence or two about what that assessment data did that led you to this action plan. Draw that connection. So we don't have to have them going, what's the connection? We're illustrating that. And that's used for the SAC COC reviewers, but it also creates that institutional memory. So when Dr. Snyder retires, we have a document, right, that other people can follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Dr. Lambert?
Good morning. Chapter or Section 9 is educational program structure and content. Really, this deals with how the educational programs or academic programs at the university are structured and sort of how those programs have built-in checks to make sure that there's quality and rigor and that we're reviewing things, right? So the rest of the committee for this one is Morgan Carter, Heather Hawk, and Wayne Atchley. But really, we're dealing with things like general education, academic program review, how we have graduate program rigor that's above and beyond undergraduate program rigor. And that's probably, those places are one of the places we're going to need some help over the next few years, because in the final report, we actually have to give examples from each college, each academic college, of a graduate program and how that program's admission standards and rigor are significantly greater than the undergraduate programs that are affiliated with it. So we'll be reaching out for some help. Thanks.
Dr. Garza?
So our group is looking at Section 10, which is educational policies, procedures, and practices. Like many of the other groups, focuses on policies and the implementation, publication, adherence to those policies. So included in what we're going to be looking at is academic policies, public information, archived information, meaning catalog and things like that. Where are we storing the information? Academic governance, admissions policies and practices, distance and correspondence education, policies for awarding credit, evaluating and awarding academic credit, and cooperative academic arrangements. So the focus of a lot of what we're doing, like a lot of the other groups, is looking at system policies, internal policies, handbooks, catalogs, things like that, making sure that what we're doing is appropriate implementation of the policies that we've set in place, and all of that in support of quality and integrity of our programs. So, thank you.
Dr. Betty?
Section 13 addresses the financial and physical resources that are required to carry out our institution's mission. So we'll be looking at things like facilities planning, obviously our financial statements, risk management and safety policies and procedures, compliance with financial aid guidelines, especially at the federal level, and then also how we ensure that grant funds are spent according to the wishes of the grantor. One thing that's different this cycle from the previous cycles is the need for an external financial statement audit. So that'll happen probably at the end of 2019 fiscal year in preparation for reaccreditation. So in previous years, the state auditor's office was able to verify our financial statements. So that'll be something different that we'll go through at the end of 2019.
Dr. Sudman is teaching class. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So what we'll do, we'll defer back to him. We're going to bring Kayla up to talk about Section 7 in a second. But one thing I want to mention, there is nobody covering Section 1, integrity, because it is the cornerstone of what we do in this process. We will tell SACs what's going on here. We'll not sugarcoat it. We'll tell them the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it takes. We're going to be honest with them. That was one when I said, I take this on, we're going to go and commit to go and do an approach that is fair and honest. If we have things we need to work on, we're going to work on those over the next couple of years. We're going to tell them about them. We're going to tell them if there's an area we're weak on, we're going to go and get that corrected. In Section 7, we're going to let Kayla talk a little about Section 7, one overview of Section 7. It really emphasizes what Dr. Snyder talked about before, is tying this planning process to what we're doing, tying this planning process to budget. So this whole process is wrapped together, and Section 7 really focuses on that. Kayla P.
Good morning. Here's what you've all been waiting for, information on the Quality Enhancement Plan, the QEP. So let me start with the committee members, and if your name is not on here and you want to join the team, come and see me. And if your name is on here and you think, whoa, I didn't know about that, that's my fault, that's not Dr. Snyder's fault. So here are the committee members: Cretance Baker, Mike Barnett, Melissa Becker, Justin Carroll, Danae Doris, Jennifer Edwards, Rusty Freed, Jim Gentry, Chris Ireland, Natalie Jones, Paula McKeehan, Sharonda Macklin, Denise Martinez, and I don't think she knows about that, but here's the deal. When you're the prior director of QEP and you have all that historical knowledge and you have a lot of wisdom and you have the wit to help me get through this without going nuts, Denise, please, wherever you are. Thank you. Julie Merriman, Chris Schau, and we have a student, Melissa Allman, and then we plan to add a faculty senate member and a staff council member. So you may remember that the previous QEP related to applied learning experiences, ALES, and the hope is that the QEP will bubble up from this strategic planning event or retreat. The new QEP should be small, it should be hyper-focused and impactful. Just a couple of things that you might want to think about as you participate in this retreat is the QEP should focus on student learning, should enhance student success, should be broad-based participation amongst everyone here at the university, takes advantage of existing programs so we do not have to reinvent the wheel in all instances, includes clear goals, has an adequate allocation of resources, and finally must include clear timelines. So we will get started this spring. We'll call the committee together, and if you would like to be on the committee, please let me know.
I was actually hoping y'all would just skip me and go on, but so from the SAC standpoint, I was assigned Section 12, which is academic and student support services. And just to summarize, excuse me, real quickly, some of the things that we're going to be looking for, and again, a lot of this is going to come out of Dr. Bourne's shop, but some from other areas as well. The first information bit here was that we provide appropriate academic and student support programs, services, and activities consistent with our mission. This is going to be pretty easy to pull off of the Student Affairs page, an SSMI page in the catalog, and some other things. So I think just demonstrating that we've got these is going to be fairly straightforward. We do need to specify some of the things we do for outreach because there's some deficiencies there, so I think we'll have to address that a little bit. The next item here was going to be a little bit more difficult, that the institution ensures an adequate number of academic and student support services staff with appropriate education or experience. So basically, we're going to have to go back to all of our support folks, whether we can pull this off of digital measures or where, I don't know, but basically an office-by-office listing of the staff with their associated credentials. So this is going to take a little bit more time, and we're going to be bugging a lot of y'all to get this information so we can put it all in one spot. The rest of these are pretty straightforward, that we have appropriate statements of student rights and responsibilities. Again, these are on the catalog and on the web page. That we have an appropriate system in place for dealing with student complaints. And again, Dr. Lisa's office and other areas on campus, dean's offices, et cetera, deal with this on a fairly regular basis. Just making sure that we have the appropriate information out there for the students to find on how they go about this. And again, it's there. We just had to dig for it a little bit, so maybe tweak our web pages a little bit on that. And then, again, making sure that records are kept in an appropriate, secure place for some of these different things. Ensuring that we protect security, confidentiality, and the integrity of student records. I think that's a no-brainer. We do that all the time. But again, just documenting that we follow FERPA, et cetera, in some of these different areas. And then finally, they're adding a few new things here, specifically that the institution provides information and guidance to help student borrowers understand and manage their debt and repay their loans. Again, I know in first year seminar, we've instituted some of those things. We've got the SALT modules that they're supposed to go through, but again, just documenting that not only freshmen, but transfer students that are coming in, because we kind of have left them off to the side, documenting some of those things. So those are the areas that we're looking at here. Again, academic and student support services. Overall, I think we're in pretty good shape, but it's going to take a little bit of time to dig into some of this information to make sure that we document, especially credentials of our support staff. Again, it's going to be a huge document, but we'll get it done. I guess I'm supposed to ask for questions? No? Good. Then we will move right on.
I will reemphasize just a few things and then we'll try to keep us on track. First of all, you've heard over and over again, and it's not a coincidence, it's not just us using the words, Southern Association and us, and we, whichever, okay, where's Janelle? Anyway, those of us are concerned that this tie into the strategic plan, and the Southern Association has changed some of their things to do that more directly. The other is that you might remember that the QEP in the past was somewhat artificial in the sense that you simply could not start it until they came and blessed it. And so they found there were some problems with that, not with us necessarily, but with universities across the nation trying to do that. And we ask, several of us, some legitimate questions about that, and that is, if you've got a good idea, why should you arbitrarily just sit on it, for 2 more years or whatever? And so that's not quite so firm anymore. Now, you won't see that when you read the new standards. It still sounds like that's the way it's going to behave, but they've said in public that that's not their intent. And so we will do perhaps a draft version, perhaps a scaled down version, perhaps, at least a slow rollout, likely before fall of 2021, in order to match with something we've identified that ties directly to the strategic plan and then has those things that Kayla just talked about. One of the other things is that whatever I may have thought or said, or you may have thought or said about the QEP in the past, I would encourage you to think about how the last one has changed our university. You can think in all kinds of ways, but think in terms of how many courses we now offer abroad. Do you really think that would have happened if the university hadn't emphasized that as part of the QEP? I don't think so. I doubt if you think about it carefully, I doubt if you will think so either. If you believe that's a good change, then you're basically saying, okay, there is something to this notion of a QEP. Oh, it can be done badly, like many things can, but it can be done well, and that's what we're intent upon doing. Kayla will lead in that effort. You will notice that that particular committee serves somewhat as a subcommittee on the steering committee, as well as a separate committee then leading us to find that topic, get that topic introduced, collect data and report on that topic in 2026. And so again, some of their main efforts will come a little further down the road in terms of the main time constraints, but they are going to get started now, as she said. We also are working with, there's some of these pieces, for instance, in number 4, I think, which is still up there, we're working with the system because a lot of those have to do with the A&M system and about reporting on that. To some of us, it seems sort of silly for all the member schools to write a separate report about the same thing and use different words or leave out pieces here and there and whatever, when we could perhaps get together with the system, write something which would apply to all of us. And there is some support for that at the system, so we are hopeful in that regard. And then certainly, again, the notion of tying this into strategic planning, that it not be something separate for our university or any other university. Several of us are aware that we go into teaching at least partially because we love the sound of our own voice, and so I'm gonna say 3 more things then and then quit. Some of the emphasis that you remember from 10 years ago, it's not been 10 yet, but it will have been 11 time we finish this process. A lot of that emphasis is still there. Student learning outcomes. That is even more important in this reporting than it was last time, and we thought that couldn't be. It is. Faculty credentials and how we report those and having all that available, yes. And then the notion that services that are provided, services of all kinds, not just academic services, but services of all kinds, that we can document that those are applied across our campuses, at our different campuses, not necessarily in identical ways, but in ways which are supportive of the students at every one of those sites. We will still be required to do those things and these others, but those are perhaps primary. Again, because of the folks who are chairing committees, I am very optimistic about this process. There is lots of work to do. We are on track to do that. Donna, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, SACS team, a big team. About half of them are in this room, I think. Thank you.
I'm going to pull in a little bit from the SACS presentation we heard and remind you that ideas from the QEP, or for the QEP, not from the QEP, ideas for the QEP can also be discussed. There's a recorder at each table, and then if your comments aren't captured by the recorder or you think of other things you'd like to share, there's also 3x5 cards on the table. So the format we followed with Dr. Murray we'll hear from Dr. Garza, Dr. Richardson, Dr. McGregor, and then wrap up with Dr. Borens.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are you? Excellent. I'm going to start out by claiming the privilege of just a very large sort of blanket forgiveness because I will not be able to cover all the initiatives and all the program activities that we have going on. If yours isn't on my list of highlights, that doesn't mean it's any less important to our students or the work that we're doing. I'm also going to call out attention to a few folks who this is their first time to ever attend one of these. And again, I may miss someone, and in that event, also forgive me for that. I will, however, start out by claiming a privilege that I told you that I was going to invoke at the beginning of this year, the year of the Snyder. And so the first thing that I want to share with you, and it's completely sincere, although some of this hopefully will be a little bit funny, but Diane and I have had the arduous task of redefining the position description and initiating the search for Dr. Snyder's replacement, even though he's irreplaceable. So that is indeed a challenge. And as evidence that the incumbent influences the position description of the follower, I will say, I'm going to share with you 2 of the position description requirements. Number 1, the individual we are looking for must have impeccable diplomacy. They must be able to tell a student, a parent, and a faculty member no without ever hurting their feelings. That's what he does each and every day. We're not sure it's actually his impeccable diplomacy or the fact that he writes it in such a long missive, you just wear out before you get to the end of it. Don't know. And then the second one that I wanted to share with you, the second position requirement is very short. Has a speed other than slow and stop. That's Dwayne's claim to fame, is he only has 2 speeds, slow and stop. So, just moderate. We're not even asking for fast, but just something other than slow and stop would be really, really helpful to us in academic affairs. Also, I want to recognize just a few individuals in the room who are new to leadership roles, not different leadership roles, but actually new to leadership. in my division, and this will be their first time to attend one of these, and I hope that they are not disappointed. But Mirsha, would you please stand up? Department Chair for Engineering, thank you, Mirsha, and Computer Science. Dale Telgenhoff for Medical Laboratory Sciences and Public Health. Randall Bowden for Educational Leadership and Technology. And then 3 new assistant department heads in here that I saw, and if I miss someone again, that blanket forgiveness will be invoked. Robin Pate, I saw Robin over here. Eva Lise Arbon, I saw her come in earlier. There she is up here. And Jamie Borchardt, I saw Jamie earlier. There's Jamie. So welcome them if you get the chance at our next break or at lunch. So I'm going to talk about a few of the initiatives, major initiatives that we have going on in the academic division that fall under multiple of some of the directives that are out there. And that's the sign of something that's large and strategic. Number one, each one of these that I'm going to talk about today are not achieved in just 1 year. They have been multiple year projects. That's what's strategic about them. And their impact largely falls under multiple of the goals and directives. And so I would have to say some of the foremost work that's going on in the academic division right now falls under the heading of the Reimagining the First Year project. We have a group of faculty and department chairs working with Dr. Jason Latouche and Jim Gentry on looking at the very high DFW rate courses and trying to reimagine and insert academic innovation into those and student transformation that will help them have greater impact and impact student success. We also have another group under Dr. Latouche's leadership that is looking at the freshman year seminar and have really completely redesigned that in concept, and their work is continuing as we speak. We're partnering with the academic advising group to develop the maps that our students will be following through their progression throughout the academy. Then those things that we're working on under the academic and research profile, elevating that for the university. We have multiple areas that are working on their very first levels and second levels of accreditation, more prestigious accreditation. College of Business has been working for at least 4 years, where Steve, 4 years at least on AACSB accreditation. They got a couple of more to go to actually pull that rabbit out of the hat. Dr. Martinez feels like she's in an endless ABET accreditation mode with her new programs and getting some of the existing programs reaccredited. Congratulations to counseling for achieving KCREP accreditation. The athletic training is working on CATE. There will actually be people here on campus today working on that. And then our social work continuing to pursue CSWE and getting very close to wrapping that up in the next few years. In terms of the research profile, we've begun work on adding focus areas that the university becomes known for. And we applied for and have successfully obtained 2 of the Chancellor's Research Initiative investment. The first one on bioenergy, we celebrated that one last year. And that has a research professor who's leading that, Dr. Kahn, and he has a couple of postdocs. And you may not see that because they're out at the dairy doing their work and out at the farm doing their work. And so you may not see that, but that is going on. It's some very, very important work out there. We also were awarded a second one, and we are now searching for the research professor to lead that. But that one's in cybercrime and cyberterrorism. We have conversations in other areas that are becoming more important. In analytics, we're looking at SNAP or the food supplement programs. We're looking at things related to first responders and first responder stress types of activities to develop focused research pockets across the university that will elevate our profile. We have intentionally added a lot of new master's degree programs and have several others under consideration or in the development pipeline. One of the things that Dr. DeTavio mentioned was the changing scope of community colleges. And what we know is increasing pressure each and every legislative session to expand their authority into the baccalaureate world. As that happens, and it will happen, hopefully gradually, but it will happen, it becomes important for us as a university to distinguish ourselves from those community colleges entering the baccalaureate sector so that we put a lot more focus in our growth and advancement at the graduate level. Our Carnegie application, Dr. Doris confirmed this morning that will go in 2019. Another thing that's been 4 years in the planning and working to develop the programs that are in that, to implement those, to get them documented, and continue to collect information on their impact on the community. And under student transformation, we talked earlier about how important that first QEP was in shaping our identity and some of the things we do. But we're still focused on expanding those high-impact experiences that we defined 10 years ago as a part of this process. But in looking at those, one of the things that we discovered, those wonderful high-impact programs that we developed mostly impact juniors and seniors. And so what we've been looking at is how do we reach out and develop high-impact experiences that we can push down to the freshman and sophomore level, because that's where we have most of our retention issues and concerns, and expand so they actually touch a very large number of students. And we have a couple of projects that I've shared with you, the Texan Debate and the Tarleton Town Hall, that literally are having tremendous success in touching thousands of students during a given year. And so we're looking for other programs that will replicate that same type of high impact, but on our freshmen and sophomores. And toward that end, we've been looking at some things, particularly in the sciences. They have a group who's piloting what's called the Phage Hunters, and Dr. Pierce is hoping they will be able to expand that. And then lastly, we have a lot of major initiatives under looking at different groups across campus and within the academic division, and providing opportunities for more individuals to participate in special development opportunities. Dr. Lambert is implementing the Research Fellows Program. Dr. Taylor, the Leadership Fellows Program. We very intentionally packaged some things together for our department chairs. We had a very good 3-day session for them this year. And so we'll continue that work in how to provide development opportunities in the name of exemplary service. Thank you. Now, I think, is somebody going to remind the tables of their, where's Donna? Of their charge before we break out? Sure. All right.
So again, in reviewing Dr. Murray's presentation and also the notes that are in the purple covered packet, identify those 2 things that are the most important, those 2 things that are the least important, and then discussion around other important aspects that should be considered by academic affairs. And again, the aside with help coming up for a potential QEP.
Okay, so I have the pleasure of summarizing the strategies for the Division of Enrollment Management. So I'm just going to hit sort of the high points, given that we've got a limited amount of time. So just moving through here, is a lot of these strategies, I must say, came from the sort of the inherited leadership of academic affairs. And so you're going to see a lot of things in here that are sort of continuations of, that result from the reorganization. So one of the ongoing important strategies is the development and ongoing continuation of the development of the major action plans and the academic advising guides that so many of you contributed to, and I think are just so impressive and wonderful resources for our students. Another thing that we sort of aspire to, that we started talking about a lot, is the aspiration that we provide uniform service and support across all campuses, and that we see every student as equally important to us. So that's not necessarily a particular strategy, but it's a governing principle that sort of is embedded in a lot of the strategies that we carry forward. Similarly, we strive to be very transfer friendly, and so one of the strategies that we had here was execution implementation of the recommendations of the of the transfer task force. And so again, one of the governing principles that we have is that we seek or strive to treat the transfer student in the same way that we do a native student. You see reference here in several strategies to aid, scholarship or aid money. And so part of that is some of it is focused on shaping our population, our student population. Some of it is focused on assisting the completion effort, the notion, or the student's effort to complete the degrees. So a lot of what we do there at the end, there's a reference to outreach with the high schools. A lot of what we do, obviously, and continue to do, is very intentional outreach to target high school feeders and to improve the relationships. Most importantly, that's another word that we increasingly we're starting to use, relationship. We want to have very strong relationships with our high school partners and our top academic partners that are the community colleges. We want people recruiting for us, and so that's something that we're really focusing on. RELIS is a big initiative that many of you are contributing to. Dr. Freed is providing some very important leadership to that effort, and thanks to his leadership, we are gathering or receiving the attention of the system. Very often I hear that Tarleton is kind of leading the way on the onboarding of that whole concept, so we're doing real well there. Another focus there that is still under academic excellence that we have, you'll see a couple of strategies here that focus on collection of data, and so one of the references here is to National Clearinghouse. National Clearinghouse pulls data from all of the different schools. Every university and college has to submit data to the National Clearinghouse. So we're being a lot more intentional and focused about pulling data from the clearinghouse so we can understand where our stop-outs are going, where our admits who didn't enroll are going, and so on. And so we're pulling together, it's slow going, but we're pulling together a strategy so that we can be smarter about the way we do things. Moving on to student transformation, I'll just say that we have the benefit of being able to concentrate on what happens to our students or the success of our students post-graduation. And so there are several strategies that are outlined here that our career services group provides important leadership to. Under distinctive engagement, again, there's a focus on outreach and partnerships with our top academic partners. I apologize, I'm not going through the details of the strategies because I don't want to sort of suggest anything being one more important than the other. So I'm just sort of giving the high points, fully assuming and recognizing that you're going to go through these. So in strengthening the partnerships, I guess what we've been talking about is deepening the existing relationships that the university has intentionally described as or identified as important partnerships, and then beyond that, broadening or widening our access, or trying to broaden or widen the groups to whom we try to tell our story. And so we are obviously very focused in Midlothian, Waco, Fort Worth, Stephenville, virtual, on deepening the relationships that are so important to us there. But beyond that, we are laying a groundwork to begin recruiting students from the San Antonio, Houston, Austin, South Texas areas. So we're trying to move in that direction. Under communications, we are very focused, as you all know, and you're very involved in the utilization of the Student Success Collaborative platform. Fewer of you are involved in Target X, but that is moving forward. And so we're trying to get much better about communicating with current students as well as prospective students in particular looking at marketing and again, improving our presence in the digital platform. We're also having a lot of conversations about what the messaging should be. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is why are we telling students they should come to Tarleton, and what about that message is different from what Angelo State or Midwestern State or whoever else is using. And so we're trying to provide a distinct, clear message, clarify in our own minds. We believe that we're offering a quality educational experience here. We need to get better at messaging that, and so that's something that we're working on. We're also wanting to focus with a custom view book, just one thing, we're wanting to focus on program level recruitment, and so we're taking a step in that direction because we think one of the messages that is so strong for us is the academic programs that are being offered here. Moving over to the last page, we have, like many of you, have a number of offices where you've got 10 people serving 13,000 students. It's hard to do stuff like that. So you have to be efficient about what you do, and so a lot of the bullet points under the efficiency there are references to onboarding of new platforms, new solutions. But when you don't have enough people, you got to figure out how to do it anyway. That's the expectation, and so we're trying to figure out how to do some of those things through the onboarding of several of the systems there, and we're just trying to be more efficient and do more with less. So. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I've been given the sign to go ahead and give our part. This is the Finance and Administration. My name is Rick Richardson. It's my pleasure to lead the Finance, well, wait a minute, I'm not leading, I'm just staying the hell out of the way, is what my direct reports told me to do. So, and by the way, just to put some faces with our division, which we are the behind the scenes. We touch your life every day. When you come here, you sign on your computer, you flip on your lights, or whatever it is, we touch your life every day, and we keep the electricity on most of the time. But I've got to say, seriously, when it goes off, folks are working around the clock to get it back on just as quickly as they can. And it is an amazing division. I didn't have the appreciation for the amount of effort that goes in to keeping this university functioning on a daily basis. I didn't have that appreciation before having the privilege of serving as your interim finance VP for the last 6 months. And Dr. DeTavio's advice to me, as he said, will you do this for a while? And I said, yes, sir. And he didn't even break a smile. He said, just don't screw it up. I'm trying. So this division is made up of about 6 areas, and that includes business services, Lori Beatty, employee services, Angie Brown, information technology services, Becky Gray, compliance and risk management compliance, Kent Styron, procurement, that's Elaine Chu, and she's under the weather, so she sends her best wishes for this. And also our extremely important partner, SSC, which is led by Aaron Wand. And these folks do represent several hundred employees who, as I said, do an incredible job on a daily basis to try to make what you're doing successful. There's a couple of highlights that we've got. Their details are in the packet for you, but to give you kind of a perspective, we do touch the lives of students in lots of ways. If we were to look at our business services area, for example, sometimes students get behind on the payment of their bills. And if you just looked at business services, in the spring 2017 semester alone, they made over 2,000 personal calls to those folks who were experiencing some trouble, that if they don't get their bills reconciled or if they don't get a payment plan in place, they will be out of school. And so that's kind of the efforts. When you look at the help desk, and Stephen Wilson, who does an incredible job in leading our help desk as well as the services section of it, just in the last calendar year, they probably responded to the better part of 25,000 calls for help. When the Zoom, if you were to think about that, many of you use Zoom and probably don't think a whole lot about it. I don't think a whole lot about it, or didn't. But we probably had about 2,500 Zoom meetings last year, 750 participants, and that amounts to about 600,000 minutes of Zoom meetings. All of that has to be facilitated, and that's done by the great work of some of our IT folks. When you think about the other impacts that our division makes on students as well as your life, but in particular students, we employ lots of students in our area. For example, again, in Stevens area, there are about 30 students at any given time that work in the tech support area. So if you've got a problem, or if a student has a problem, then they call the help desk, which probably, if we were to do a show of hands, most of us have done that. Then you're probably going to talk to a really talented student, and they try to hire them at the freshman level and bring them on in so that they have a skill set. And that skill set is very valuable when they leave the university and go out for jobs. We move over to risk management, and in Kent Styron's area, they do lots of fire inspections. Well, they are now utilizing students and training them and help with that. And it turns out that because of that experience, one of Tarleton's graduates was able to get a job in the fire inspection service of the city of Austin. So we touch lives in many positive ways, some of which we might not think of as off the top, but it does behind the scenes. This is the practical work experience that we can provide for them. When we look at the efforts to engage, we are reaching out to business leaders and community leaders and bringing them in and trying to create more relationships between the finance division and the local communities, as well as create partnerships and opportunities for our students as well as for our faculty in the local business environment. We try to create, in terms of our divisional department's web presence, we're trying to make those clearer. We've got some work done well in the risk management area, as well as IT services, as well as many of the others. When we think about exemplary service, we've done ways about which you wouldn't ordinarily see, but our business services area has worked to provide students funds available on a quicker basis, gives them the ability to make the payments, and which is much faster than they ordinarily, than in years gone by, had been the case. When we think about our partnership with SSC and the way that they touch our lives, whether it be from maintaining the buildings to walk down Rudder Way and the beauty that is there now. Don't look down Lillian for a while, but that'll be another beautiful example of the work that's being done, as well as the myriad of other projects that they help oversee and make happen. When we think about, as we move forward as a university, one of the initiatives that we've entered into, based upon feedback that we've heard from the faculty and staff community, is a better working relationship with SSC, and to have a facilitator, a representative of you, that can help interpret the process, keep processes online. Maybe it's a construction project that you want. So we've created a vendor management role. And actually, Elaine Chu will be stepping into that vendor management role. And we'll have a vacancy in our procurement services, and she'll help oversee that area for a while as we make that transition. So more to come about that. When we think about, even in the risk management area and Kent's area, they touch lives and working in collaboration with student affairs and the bonfire. The bonfire. What are the risks? How can risk management help mitigate those risks? Things for them to think about. If you have a problem, if you have a medical issue on campus, there's a high likelihood that the work in Kent's area he's created an emergency response team, which can help in certain medical instances, and they may be on the scene before anybody else. So some things that are going on which you may not be aware of. Established building coordinators that can help in emergencies and respond. Title IX, we're in the risk management area and compliance. We're heavily into that area as well in terms of investigation and helping make sure that we stay compliant with Title IX. Those are just some of the things that you might see. In our employee services area, the biggest change coming out of the system in terms of helping us do our jobs better has been Workday. Now, it's still in the process of coming to complete fruition and working out a few bugs, but Angie Brown and her talented team has led Tarleton through the process of getting to where we're at today and helping us even build it further in the future. Things that you'll see from Workday will include from Lori Beatty's area, probably the enhancement of Workday from an accounting perspective, which, thank God, Famous is going to die. And at least that's what she tells me. And it'll be a wonderful day in the life of the university and in the life of the system when that occurs, but that's going to be on the horizon. When you think about Lori's area and the accounting folks, what they do, they make sure we get paid promptly. They make sure that all of our, that we stay on track. If you think about it from a SACS perspective, the work that's being done in the financial background, that's all important because one of the elements of SACS is financial integrity and stability, and as well as all of that's going on behind the scenes. And just to give you a few examples, they're continuing to look at ways to enhance the service to you, faculty, staff, and students, taking Canopy and elements that have been, or options that have been in Canopy for decades, which have not been used, are now being implemented. And that's from the leadership that's happening in this incredible division. When you look at where we're going in the future in terms of our information services, well, just some of the things. You now have internet in a box. Anybody used internet in a box yet? Well, if your internet goes down or you need a specific application for internet, we've got internet box. Contact Becky Gray. We can deliver that to you. Anybody still alive that experienced dial-up? I'm one. I know some of you have as much gray hair as I do. You almost experienced that. You almost experienced that in the fall. Had it not been for Becky Gray and her talented folks who saw that coming and had a solution that led us through, we would have had dial-up service in the middle of the fall. So hats off to Becky Gray and her team, as well as everybody else that made that happen. And as well as the cabinet, which approved the expenditure. We'll give them a little credit while we're doing that. But in terms of looking forward, we've got the banner upgrade that will come along. You'll be involved in that. But behind the scenes, it takes about a year of work from the IT services to make that happen. And we're going to need your help. They're already starting to work on the Spectre and the Meltdown features. So are the hardware flaws that have to be corrected worldwide. And so you'll hear more about that, but we're going to need your help with all of that. Again, we're the behind-the-scenes folks. Some of the things that I mentioned today are just on the surface. They don't fall neatly into many of the areas, but we've tried our best to put them where we think they're most appropriate. And hats off to the wonderful leaders that I mentioned at the beginning of this, and the several hundred employees who try to make your life easier and better, as well as the students' lives easier and better on a daily basis. Thank you.
Good morning. Donna's given me the nod to go ahead and move on to the next section. And so I will begin. My name is Kyle McGregor, Vice President for Institutional Advancement, and I'm going to give you a a brief overview of our strategic activities over the FY 17-18 fiscal years in our divisional report there. Before I do, much like Dr. Richardson did, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the division itself, and that we too are a service division that really supports the university. Dr. Richardson mentioned being internal to the institution, and many times, not all the time, we have great examples of working within the institution, but we're external to the institution, bringing things to the institution or pushing people or a message external to the institution. So really on that fringe, advancing, which is in the name obviously, advancing the institution. And I wanted to introduce our three AVPs that really push our efforts forward within the division. Janice Horak, who heads up development, Sabra Guerra, who heads up advancement and external relations, as well as Harry Batson, who Harry is not with us this morning, but Cecilia, you all know that Harry is retiring. Tomorrow is his last day, and Cecilia Jacobs is taking up that mantle in an interim term for marketing and communications. So thanks so much for that, Cecilia. We appreciate you. So really being that group that pushes the university's story and the message outside of the institution is a really large thrust of the division. And I got to thinking about each of these goal areas and how we support them both strategically and tactically. And one of the things that really hasn't been brought up yet that we were immersed in over the last calendar year was the centennial with the Texas A&M University system, which consumed the division in a very large way. And I know it consumed a lot of the university. Jennifer, I agree. It consumed the university in a very large way. So just by a show of hands, everyone in the room that was a member of the Centennial Committee? Okay. All right. And Daryl Brown was heading that up. Thank you for that. And here's one that should get a reaction. Everyone that participated in or was impacted by the Board of Regents visit. Well, there should be more than that, but it was a campus-wide effort, and I want to say thank you for those of you that participated and volunteered your time and really made Tarleton shine during all of the year-long event, which was the centennial, and especially putting us in a great position in the system for the Board of Regents meeting. Just huge, impactful events and very strategic for what we were doing as a division and cut across all these goal areas for us. So I thought about each of the four areas, and rather than going through and picking off each one, you can read those individually and talk about them at your table. But I wanted to take some broad strokes and talk about strategically what the division's doing. And that I risk hurting some feelings of folks that are working very, very hard on tactical issues that support strategic issues. But if you look at what the division's doing strategically in the last year to push what we're doing forward, you really have to look at three primary areas. It's the first is telling the story of our brand. And that's through the brand marketing campaign and all the areas and efforts of marketing and communications. And it's amazing that when you go into Fort Worth, particularly because that's the primary focus area, even though we're outside of Fort Worth, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Strategically, we were going to be in Austin at this point and then Houston in the next calendar year, but we decided let's pull back and wait until we get the Fort Worth campus open before we abandon that strategic effort to really tell that Tarleton story in a powerful way in Fort Worth. It just makes so much sense that we keep that pressure on there, and it has paid dividends. We hear people in Fort Worth all the time talk about us, how excited they are for us, and it's opened many doors and provided many opportunities. So that is a huge strategic area. Now, if you talk about communicating our brand, we do it in multiple ways, through multiple print, electronic video. Mike's back there at the back taking video today. We do that in multiple methodologies through the web. There's multiple ways that do that in the ways we reach out, and it's not just in Fort Worth. It's also with people, obviously with our alumni. Jessica's here today, who heads up the Alumni Association. So that's telling the story of our brand is a huge strategic effort outside the institution that we engage in. The second is, I'm going to mention Rick again. When I stepped into this role just about 3.5 years ago, I was very clear to communicate to the team that Rick Richardson had done a phenomenal job in his 5 years before that of setting up a major gifts program. Yeah, reach for your wallet, Rick. Here's the 20. Rick had done a great job of setting up a major gifts program at the university that's very robust, something that we had not necessarily had, and really was able to step in the role, and Janice has been able to lead her team and move that major gifts program forward. What we've strategically moved into is a way to engage more of a breadth of our alumni, friends, and donors to advance the annual giving component of the institution, making it more robust, where we have a more of a broad cross-section that we're cutting through, and we're talking about students, faculty, staff, alumni, friends, corporations, and really engaging people with more breadth. It brings more people to the table en masse. And so that's not a short-term turnaround proposition. That is really taking the long view and looking at giving to the university on an annual basis strategically, which then leads to larger gifts in the future. So that's, from a giving standpoint, Janice and her team have been focusing very hard on that, and there's a lot of things that we're doing. Jennifer Hawthorne has worked very hard in the last year with ITS and folks in business services to bring community funded, which is an online giving platform to the institution, and we are looking for it to make a big impact in the next year. The third thing is philanthropy in specific markets and with specific projects. Obviously, Fort Worth is strategic for us, and President DeTavio has charged me with being in Fort Worth and making friends there, and so I think that cuts across the board through all divisions, not just me, but strategically being in Fort Worth to make more friends. That's a market area for us. That's why the brand marketing campaign is there. And then next, the component of specific projects. We have the stadium project that's going on. We have the engineering building that's going on. We have the Fort Worth building that's going on. So strategically looking at those projects for major gifts and working around those. Once again, making sure that we're working the major gifts program. And fourth, and finally, I said three, I'm sorry, I misspoke, there's four. Enhancing efficiency and quality, whether that's processing gifts, shepherding donors, engaging alumni, hosting guests and friends, communicating and marketing both internally and externally. Those areas we're looking to improve efficiency and quality. So as you look through all four of these goal areas and how we serve them both strategically and tactically, those are four of the areas that are four of the main broad sweeping areas that I wanted to mention today. And once again, there are specific things that we're doing in there, and I hope you've had time to digest those. So thank you very much. I look forward to your feedback.
All right, good morning. I'm holding you between lunch. I'm between you and lunch, and so I'm gonna talk quick, and I'm being timed, just so you know. So those of you, I think I know most of everyone in the room. I didn't hear what that was. My name is Laura Bourne, and I serve as the Vice President for Student Affairs. Quick poll, between September, the end of August, and last week, how many packages were dispersed in the post office in this building? That's a department in Student Affairs. Any idea? This gets you the front of the line for lunch. 15,000. Huh? 15,000. Anyone else? Huh? Lower. Did I hear a 20,000 from someone? 20,000. 20,000. 20,000 packages. That's a 5,000 package increase from last year. Just a little FYI. All right, so 2.5 years ago, I joined the Tarleton team. Some days it feels just like yesterday, but most days it feels like an eternity ago. It's been a good experience. You know, my first year was focused on getting to know Tarleton culture and the way that we do things. Last year was focusing on the division and developing an identity our mission, our guiding professional principles, our emerging priorities, and really understanding a culture and saying, okay, what do we need to do different to become better? This past year, as many of you know, and Caleb, will you start passing out those handouts, please? This past year, we did a reorganization of the Division of Student Affairs to align our resources to the priorities of the institution, and to align to the cultural strengths, the student strengths, the institutional strengths, so that we could better serve and be a better division for the university. We tapped the talents of our individuals within the Division of Student Affairs, and I'm really proud of where we're headed. You will see in our guiding document some guiding themes that have really helped us as we're forming and becoming stronger as a unit. The theme of empowerment for our staff and our students, the theme of focusing on the student experience and what does that truly mean, and then most important, that university connection and that partnership across the university, because we know that no one is successful alone, that we have to do it together. So you'll see in the Division of Student Affairs strategic plan some real themes emerge when it comes to what we're doing and how we're doing it. The undergraduate student experience is obviously top priority. Learning environments, the hands-on experiences, leadership and service, and health and wellness. We obviously are making sure that we're supporting university-wide initiatives, the Reimagine the First Year, Healthy Campus 2020, violence prevention, the Carnegie classification, and of course, in the future, the outreach campuses and growth and student affairs presence to serve our students there. Another key factor for student affairs is the investment in the people, in our professional staff, the investment in the organization, the structure. We want to be good stewards of our money, how we're operating, so that we can best serve our students and the university. Dr. Tatavio, when he opened up this meeting, identified two things as a university that we really need to be mindful of, and that's change and competition. And when he said that, I thought, you know what, I think it's really important that I share with you from a broad perspective those emerging trends that are influencing what we do and how we do it. And if you've paid any attention to the news over the last couple weeks to the last several months, there's some real big issues that are influencing how we need to operate. Sexual violence. What are we doing to be proactive in addressing when a report comes in? What are we doing to be proactive in educating students on what is sexual violence and trying to prevent that occurring? Hazing and alcohol is a major national trend that we are also experiencing here, that we've got to address, not just with the Greeks, but across the university. But Greek life is a priority, and hazing and alcohol, reducing that is a major priority. Mental health continues to be on the forefront of student issues and how we're supporting and addressing our students across the university. And then another key issue that was brought up earlier is the student demographics. We're changing as a university. We've got our rural students coming in, our urban students coming in, a diversity in ethnicity, in culture, in socioeconomic, in locations. And we have to look at our practices, our paradigms. We've historically been a predominantly white institution, but that's changing. And that means that we really have to look at who we are, what we're about, and what we're doing, so that we're meeting the needs of not only our students today, but our students in the future. When it comes to a competitive perspective, the quality of life when students are here on campus is essential, and the amenities and what they're experiencing when they're here. The competitiveness of the quality of the institution and the holistic approach is critical in what we're doing in student affairs and how we're trying to focus. So in closing, I want to hit on a couple of things. One, our role, our contribution from a student affairs perspective starts with the foundation, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter, food, all the way through. the meaningful engagement, that our students are happy, healthy, that they're going to class, they're able to learn, we have provided the support and the network that they need to be able to do all of those things. I look forward to your input from your tables, and thank you for your time. That's my time.
I want to thank everyone today for your participation in the retreat and the tabletop discussions and providing your feedback to the directives that are going on in all 5 of our divisions. For those of you who'd like to be interested in what's going to happen to the notes that were so carefully taken by the different members, I'm going to collect them probably this afternoon, tomorrow morning. They're in a Qualtrics survey, so they'll be fairly easy to tabulate and put together for each one of the divisions. And then those notes are going to go to the executive cabinet, and the UPC members will get copies of those notes. And then eventually those notes will be put along with the video that we had made of the presentations on the UPC website. So we're trying to be pretty transparent here. Your feedback's going to get published in one way or another. And so it'll be, many eyes will be upon your feedback today, and we appreciate that. So I'll try to, I think we can send out an email when that goes out, when it's available for you to read and review. So, do we have any questions before we wrap up the day? Well, you are dismissed for lunch. Enjoy some companionship and fellowship, and we're done. Thank you.